Hey everyone, I'm Eric from Lonesome Reader, and I have a big new pile of books that I want to talk about. So I'm going to get right into talking about them, but there's a few authors in particular who are fairly popular authors that I've never read before, and I'd really like your opinion about whether I should start reading about them, whether they're worth reading, and all of that good stuff. But to begin with, I had a birthday recently, and so I was given a few books for my birthday, so I'm gonna start talking about those. Where are they? They're here. First off, well, I should say first off that a lot of people don't like giving me books for my birthday because they sort of feel like I have too many already, or they just feel like I already have all of the books, so are a bit nervous about what to buy me, and I understand that. And so sometimes I get book-related products. So I was given these socks, which are really perfect, and I think I'll be wearing all the time, and whenever anyone tries to talk to me, I will just stick my feet up at them. And they're actually women's socks, which makes it all the more perfect. And I was also given this really cute item. I don't know if I'm ever gonna actually use it, but it's a personal library kit. So it's like an old-fashioned library system where if you lend a book out, you stamp a card and have their name on it. And so it's meant as a way of, you know, tracking the books that you lend out to people, and ensuring that you get them back, which has happened to me a few times. And actually has happened to me already. I have a new copy of Kate Atkinson's novel Transcription, which I was gonna show, but I don't actually have the copy of it because my boyfriend nicked it, and I'm glad he's reading it at the moment, but I haven't read it yet, and so I don't have it to show off. And she's an author who I've read her novel A God in Ruins, and really loved it, so I'm excited to read this new book. But anyway, the books that I was actually given for my birthday, so I was given a copy of Goodbye to Berlin by Christopher Isherwood in this beautiful Folio Society edition. They always do the most incredible, beautiful, special editions of books. And he gave it to me in particular because he also promised me a weekend away to Berlin as a present, which is so exciting. I've never been to Berlin, so I'm very excited to go on that trip. And it was especially wonderful that in the birthday videos that a bunch of booktubers kindly made me, Mel and Britta suggested that I read books that are set in Berlin. So I'm definitely going to pick up copies of those books to take along with me, because it's always fun when you go on a trip somewhere, to sort of theme your reading around that place that you're going. And I am a big fan of the Goodbye to Berlin stories, which, I mean, it's called a novel, but it's really short, interlinked short stories, which are sort of partly autobiographical. And most famously, there's a story on Sally Bowles, which became the film Cabaret, starring Liza Minnelli. So yeah, I read this a long time ago, and I'm really glad to have this special new edition, even though we just bought it as a prop, really, to say that we're gonna go to Berlin, which is wonderful. And then my friend Christy, who still lives in Maine, and is probably my oldest friend that I'm still in touch with, and is a wonderful bookish soul as well. She sent me these two books, and I always love that she's fearless in sending me books. She doesn't care. She knows that I want books, and so particularly these two books, which are published in America and haven't been published in the UK yet. So the first novel is called The Endless Summer by Madame Nielsen. And the plot of this sounds a bit crazy. I don't really know how to describe it. I just heard really good things about it. So it's described as a passionate love story about a Danish woman and a much younger Portuguese artist. And it's compared to a bunch of different things. So it says it's a style reminiscent of both Proust and Lars von Trier, which makes me a bit hesitant because I loved Lars von Trier when he first started making films, but he's gone way off the rails. he's totally crazy. I don't watch his movies anymore, but he has a very interesting style. Or like Ferrante meets The Waves, and of course, because she compares it to The Waves, I'm gonna totally pick up on that and be really intrigued to read it. So yeah, this sounds interesting. And there's a quote from it by Sejan, who interesting, I would say, experimental writer from Iceland that I really like. So, and she also sent me This Mournable Body by Tsitsi Dangarembga, who is a writer that I read a really long time ago. What was that book called? Nervous Conditions, that's what it was called. Brilliant novel. Like, I don't remember too many details about it, but I remember absolutely loving it and being totally engrossed in it. She's such a good writer, so I was very excited to see that she has a new novel out. And again, it has a sort of complicated plot, which is a bit hard to summarize, but it's, I think, basically about a woman who was able to build up something of a personal fortune, and then she lost it, and now she's trying to rebuild her life and start work again. And there's a quote on the back from Madeleine Tien, whose writing I absolutely love. So I trust her, and she says that this is a good continuation on from her previous novel, Nervous Conditions. And my parents sent me a nonfiction book called Searching for Stars on an Island in Maine by Alan Lightman. And so I think they obviously sent me this because it has Maine in the title, and I'm from the state of Maine. I was especially interested to read this nonfiction book where it's, I think, a very thoughtful book, sort of rumination type book about an experience where he went out on a boat and was just staring up at the sky, and he was thinking about all these different thoughts, trying to connect religion to sciences, and the book is all about that. And I'm interested in that because one of the most beautiful experiences I ever had was when I went to Death Valley in America. It's a very remote area, and it was nighttime, and we were in a convertible, and I was in the passenger seat, and the top was down, and I was staring up at the sky. And because it's such a removed place with almost no light pollution, I could see the sky so clearly and all the stars in the sky, and it was so beautiful. I just wanted to like spend my life staring up at the night sky, because if you've ever had that experience of with not having much light in the way and being able to see the stars clearly, it is the most beautiful thing. And so yeah, I always want to like build holidays around some place where I can go stargazing and just like stare up at the sky, because it's just so beautiful. So I'm eager to read this present from my parents. Now, the rest of the books are books that I either bought for myself or that publishers kindly sent me. So start off with this group of books from Penguin, where they've been reprinting Roald Dahl's stories for adults in special collections, all built around particular themes. And so there were 4 books before, and these are 4 new books all around this particular theme. And Roald Dahl is an author that I never really knew that he wrote stories or fiction for adults as well, but he did write a lot of it. And so when I was younger, I didn't read too much of his work. I read James and the Giant Peach and loved it. So I don't know why I didn't read more, but obviously I was familiar with his work from the movie adaptations of them, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I love that how, even though I'd only read one of his books, I felt like I kind of got his sensibility, where he has this sort of twisted way of looking at the world and telling, as a way of like telling these morality type tales. And in these stories for adults, he has that same sort of aesthetic and way of looking at the world, but obviously with much more adult themes. So they involve a lot more things about like sex and power and ambition. And so I've read this collection on Trickery, and interested to read more. Let me know if you're interested in reading Roald Dahl's stories for adults and what you think about him in general. And then I have Philip Pullman's The Book of Dust, which is the new book in the series, the La Belle Sauvage series, which, and I have to admit, I've never read Philip Pullman before. I've not read his Dark Materials. So should I start with this book, which is a prequel to his Dark Materials? And so part of me thinks like oh, it would be logical to start with this book, which starts at the beginning. But then I know people love his Dark Materials, or at least people who are fans of Philip Pullman love his Dark Materials so much. So I don't know, should I start with that or should I start with this? If you're a Philip Pullman fan, let me know in the comments below. So this is another very popular author, but in Japan, and it's Genki Kawamura with a book, newly translated book called If Cats Disappeared from the World. And I'm uncertain about this because it just seems, I mean, there's a big cat on the cover. It seems very cutesy, and I wonder if the story is very cutesy too, even though it seems to be a story about this big moral dilemma of a man who makes a negotiation with the devil. The devil comes to visit him one day and he makes these negotiations with him, and but he has a cat called Cabbage, which I guess is why there's a cat on the cover. So let me know if you've ever read this author. I believe another book of his has been translated into English too and did quite well, and whether you think he's worth reading. I am so excited about this novel. So it's called A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. And it's a French book, the first in a French series of books that was very popular in France. And it's a feminist dystopian series, which sounds so wild and interesting. And I don't know why, I'm just like incredibly drawn to it. Obviously this is a proof edition, so this is what the real cover looks like, and it's beautiful. And I can't try to just like summarize the plot because it sounds quite crazy. So it says, long ago, following a cataclysm called the Rupture, the world was shattered into many floating celestial islands, now known as arcs. Over each, the spirit of an omnipotent and immortal ancestor abides. The inhabitants of these arcs each possess a unique power. Ophelia must navigate this fantastic, disjointed, perilous world using her trademark tenacity, her quiet strength, and her extraordinary gift. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm in the mood to be drawn into a big like fantasy series that also has these like strong themes about the real world. So yeah, really excited that this is just being translated into English for the first time, and intrigued to discover this whole new world. Next is a very short book with a very beautiful title called Now Now Louison by Jean Fremon. And it's a book about, I think it's a sort of experimental book that tries to inhabit the inner life of Louise Bourgeois, the artist who made these very large-scale sculptures. And I'm really drawn to it because there's a quote on the cover from Sari Hustvedt who says it's a truly wonderful book, and I love her writing and really trust her. So, so yeah, I'm very intrigued by this small little book. Paris Echo by Sebastian Faulks. And this is another author who's incredibly popular, but I've never read before. And I've always been a bit hesitant about reading him because I guess quite snobbishly, I just sort of assume he's like quite popular fiction, and so that I assume his ideas are a bit watered down and maybe not that interesting, but I could be totally wrong. So let me know what you think of Sebastian Faulks. And so this new novel, Paris Echo, is about the meeting of two very different kinds of people. One, a female student, postdoctoral student, and the other one, a teenager from Algiers, and about their different backgrounds and their experiences with each other. So yeah, I'm intrigued to read it. It sounds interesting, but like I said, just Sebastian Faulks has been an author that I've always been uncertain about. The Infinite Blacktop by Sara Gran. This is a novel about a woman who's driven off the road when she's driving from Las Vegas to LA, or the other way around. And she's uncertain about whether to call the cops, and she sets out on this path of discovery to try to find out why this person tried to drive her off the road and tried to kill her, and the whole mystery behind that. So sounds like an intriguing story. This is so exciting. Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. And you know, Sarah Moss has been like big on BookTube. Lots of people have been talking about her, and I loved her last novel. And so this is it's a very slender book. And also, like, I can't convey this on film, but it has a great texture too. So there's these branches that go across the cover, but if you run your handle on it, it feels kind of rough. So yeah, so wonderful. And the story is about a family, including a daughter, that goes on this archaeological dig or excavation for one holiday, and it's a slightly supernatural story, I think, because they find there the story of another girl who died many years ago, and the communication that starts happening between this long dead girl and the daughter of this family. So yeah, it sounds like quite a surreal, spooky story, sort of perfect for autumn. Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. And she won the Man Booker International Prize earlier this year, and sort of controversially, I tried reading her novel Flights and just didn't get on with it. I wasn't connecting with it, so I stopped reading it. But I did recognize that her writing was really beautiful. She had some really interesting insights. So I do want to give her another chance, and do want to go back to Flights at some point, because maybe it was just the time I was reading it, I couldn't connect with it. I've heard several people say that Flights is one of the most extraordinary books that they've ever read. So yeah, I think she definitely deserves another chance. So Fitzcarraldo Editions have brought out her new novel. And this is a novel about a eccentric woman in her 60s who gets involved in a sort of murder case. And but I think it's, you know, not your typical detective story, that it has a more thoughtful and philosophical twist to it. So I'm really intrigued to read this new novel. A Perfect Mother by Katri Skala. And this is published by a publishers that I haven't come across before, called Hikari Press. And they do this is like a really beautiful edition of the book. There's this sort of flap that goes over the hardback of the book, and just the inside colors and the cover and the make of the book is really beautiful. But they're not the best at summarizing the plot of a story. I mean, it might be one of those stories that's really difficult to summarize. It's basically about a man who goes to northern Italy to find out things about his past there, and he meets two women, and the three of them uncover different things about their past. So that all sounds very vague, but it's sort of described as asking the big questions like, what do we inherit from the broken histories of our parents and our grandparents, and how does this shape our own sense of identity? Can we ever escape the past? Are stories, the ones we are told and the ones we tell, integral to how we know each other and how we love? What does it mean to be a good parent, let alone the perfect mother? And so those that makes it sound slightly pretentious, but they're all sound like really interesting questions, and if the story explores that in a really dynamic way, then I would be really intrigued by this novel. The Incendiaries by R.O. Kwon. This novel has been getting a lot of attention. I think a lot of people in America have been talking about it, and it's just been published in the UK by Virago Press. And the plot sounds quite complicated, but I think it's about two people from different religions who come together. One of them is a American Korean woman who gets involved with extremist religion and with terrorism. But what really draws me to this novel is the string of blurbs on the back by authors, all of whom I've read and really admire and respect and really like their writings. So there's Garth Greenwell and Celeste Ng, Jenny Offel, Viet Thanh Nguyen, and Lauren Groff. And so yeah, those are all opinions I really trust. Prodigal by Charles Lambert. I'm so excited to read this. It's quite a big book, but I'm really excited to read this because Charles Lambert is a very unique writer. His writing often has a slightly surreal type tone, and he just has a very unique way of looking at the world. And the story sounds really intriguing. So it's about a man in his 50s who's lived in Paris for a very long time, and his profession is writing softcore porn under a pseudonym, under the name of a female writer pseudonym, and it's about his process of going back to England and reconnecting with the family that he's left and a life that he's left behind by making a new life in Paris, and so digging into that personal history. And yeah, I'm just really drawn to that story, and like I said, he's such an interesting writer. I'm intrigued to see what he has done now. Strike Your Heart by Amélie Nothomb. This is another French book by newly translated by Europa Editions, and so this is the proof again, so this is what the cover looks like. And this is a very short novel about a young woman and the challenging relationships she has with other women, including her mother and female friends, and about the different challenges that women in particular have in their relationships to each other in society. So I've heard this book talked about by a couple of people, so very intrigued to read it. The New Testament by Jericho Brown. This was published a couple months ago, and this is the first time this poet has been, this American poet has been published in the UK. I believe he's quite a popular poet in America, I mean, amongst, you know, poetry reading people, and his poems are about race and identity and culture, and about the body, and about how violence is particularly prevalent in certain neighborhoods, and how trauma runs through generations of families. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to read this poetry. Family Lexicon by Natalia Ginsburg. This is an Italian writer who was writing in the mid-20th century, and her writing has been newly published in these beautiful new editions by Daunt Books. And this is a novel, a semi-autobiographical novel about a family living in Italy under Mussolini and trying to negotiate how to live in society as people who are against Mussolini and against fascism. So that sounds like a really interesting, engaging story. Brothers in Blood by Amr Anwar. This is a novel about a young man who's been newly released from prison, and who wants to just live a normal, stable life and hold down a job, but finds himself drawn into a life of crime again. And it's from a new publisher called Dialogue Books, whose the whole point of this publisher is that they want to spark conversations between people, which seems like a very noble aim. And finally, I have these new editions of two short books by Sara Mangasso. So one of them is her diary entries following her life, and how, in particular, how her life changes when she becomes a mother. And then the other one is called 300 Arguments, and it's aphorisms of just little like insights looking into life. And this author has really big fans in Celeste Ng and Miranda July and Jenny Offel and Edmund White and Joanna Walsh. So authors I'll really like, and I think her writing has been compared and praised by Maggie Nelson, who's another author I really like a lot. So yeah, interesting short little books to sort of have on your desk to look at occasionally, I think, rather than just reading all the way through. So those are all the books I have to talk about. Let me know if you've read any of them, which ones you're most interested in. Let me know your advice about the more popular authors that I haven't read, and whether you think I should give them a try or not. And I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.